In the last few episodes, I broke down the real beginnings of the Next Generation era. We discussed humanity and where it had come, its ego and pompous nature, along with the pacifistic leanings we'd see in the future. I then analyzed the court that put Picard and humanity on trial, as well as broke down how both Q and Picard were in the wrong. Idiots of a sort. Now, let's dissect the last piece of all of this, Q's test. The most boring part. After the initial interaction with the Q, Picard and the crew would continue their voyage to Farpoint Station. Again, their mission was to determine how the station is able to thrive while still attempting to garner good relations. While all of this was going down and the captain was making his way to the station, the new executive officer, Will Riker, was already starting to investigate what was going on. He had arrived on the station earlier via the USS Hood, another Starfleet vessel. While looking into the station, he would notice a few oddities here and there, but he really had no evidence or understanding of what was going on, or if anything was wrong. The administrator, however, seemed extremely interested in Starfleet's approval and appeared to want the deal, at this stage at least, very much. After speaking with the administrator of Farpoint Station, the executive officer would attempt to enlist the assistance of the doctor in investigating the matter, and while she was initially resistant, she would agree to help. And, of course, we would get some dialogue that is the bane of my existence as the doctor advises the merchant to charge an item to her account. This has caused many a fool to try and challenge me on if Starfleet still uses money in the 24th century. While this is a simple inconsistency that will be retconned by the second or third season, with the Federation having gotten rid of money after the 23rd century, there are some explanations. First, Farpoint Station is not a part of the UFP yet and may still have an economy. It would make sense that Starfleet had some coin on hand to deal with those that had use for such an item. Additionally, it could also be that while there was a charge to her account, it wouldn't mean that they would pay in money, but perhaps some form of barter. The Federation, having space magic and the ability to make things appear out of thin air, could have valued items that people enjoy that they could just replicate. Ultimately, it's more an annoyance than anything else, so let's move on. The secondary hull of the Enterprise would ultimately arrive, and after being exceptionally rude to Lieutenant LaForge, who is dressed in red, and I'm sure none of that will change in the future, Riker beams aboard and is taken to the captain by Tasha Yar, who, unironically, will never really be able to show her potential on the show. Anyway, the captain orders that the executive officer is taken to the viewer to see the events that had occurred. Apparently, that means he watches just clips from what happened in part 1, with no context, which apparently still immediately updates him. Okay. After Riker observes the clip show, Picard appears standoffish and challenges him by ordering him to manually dock the saucer section. Oh yeah, the saucer section actually arrives, even though it would take years for it to get there with no warp drive. Let's just assume that Q magicked it there and no one questioned it. When it comes to docking the saucer section with the secondary hull, of course, Riker would be able to do so in what is supposed to be a tense moment, but just is really slow. You know, that's a good description for most of Season 1, if you ask me. After this, nothing of extreme interest occurs for a while, though Picard has some interesting back and forth with another Starfleet ship and is admonished by Q. The captain replies with the best line in all of Trek to date, in my opinion at least. He states that if they are to be damned, let them be damned for who they are. Again, like most of the show, after this excellently written dialogue, nothing would occur for a while. There are a few moments where we see Deanna Troi be insanely inappropriate with Riker utilizing her telepathic powers, but again, it's worth ignoring. When we finally get back to the plot and what will become relevant in the Drumhead, Picard relies on Deanna's powers in an attempt to garner information from the Administrator. The Administrator calls them out on this, but negotiations continue. During the conversations with the Administrator, who threatens to go to the Ferengi if Starfleet doesn't agree to certain terms, Deanna feels extreme pain from a creature that they don't yet see or haven't found. And she'll continue this until the end of the episode, in my opinion, not adding a whole lot. The administrator becomes irritated and negotiations break down, with Picard calling the bluff of the man. The captain of the Enterprise states if the administrator wants to go to the Ferengi, he can. Picard does have a quip about the Ferengi thinking that the man was as tasty as previous clients, but I'm guessing this is just a barb. I doubt he was really speaking on Ferengi eating habits. The crew remains somewhat confounded. Farpoint Station appears to be some form of anomaly with geothermal energy as the only resource. There doesn't appear to be any way for the base to be so well constructed, with things just magically appearing when people want them. With the administrator not helpful, the crew continues to investigate. An entire away team would be sent down. This, of course, wouldn't be specialists, but the executive officer, chief counselor, because that makes sense, chief security, second officer, and Geordi, who doesn't have a position we're told of yet. You know, just the logical people to send down. You can make the excuse she is down there to feel the emotions of the being, because that adds a lot of value to what the crew needs and the plot. But beyond that, Troy is able to feel the entity's feelings, but she can also feel it when she's on the ship. So she didn't really need to be down there, but anyway, please comment and tell me how I'm wrong. Before they actually get to, the mission, Deanna shows that she's pretty thirsty, offering to go down in the catacombs with Riker alone. Man, already showing value on the team right now. Riker decides to stay on the top level with Data and sends Yar, Deanna, and Geordi into the catacombs. Because he actually wants to get the job done. While the away team is attempting to determine what was occurring, a ship of some sort arrives out of warp, scans the Enterprise, and ultimately begins firing into the old city and around the newer one. Again, Q would arrive and begin to taunt Picard. The captain does his best to ignore him and works through the situation. Ultimately, the crew is able to determine that the people of the station had captured an alien and were forcing it to do what they wanted it to do. The Enterprise crew frees the alien, and Q tentatively leaves, saying that they had done well. Unfortunately, these 2 episodes would be a poor outing for the Enterprise. If you've noticed, I put a lot of emphasis on what Starfleet was and who the crew were, as well as Q and his court, and not the actual mission because it's boring and doesn't add a lot. Stay tuned for the last video when it comes to this breakdown, where we take a look at what Q was actually trying to do. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.